Hello kitties and welcome back to another tutorial. This is going to be a pattern and sewing tutorial for this maxi slip dress. This style is actually inspired by the viral Skims Bodycon dress and it was a request from one of you guys under my previous tutorial. So if you'd like to see how I made this, make sure to keep on watching. Starting off with the material of choice, I am using a cotton stretch jersey. This is a 4-way stretch and I got 2 meters, even though I ended up using just a little bit over 1.5 meters in this chocolatey brown color. I'm going to be starting off with these measurements, and the first I'm needing is the across front chest. I would say take this a little bit smaller than you think you need because your fabric will stretch across your bust. Next up, I'm deciding on how deep I want my neckline to be, and for this I just measured above my bust, how high I wanted to go above my bust line. Here I'm measuring my bust line across like this, and then I'm going to be measuring the vertical distance from my bust to my waist because that's going to guide me when I'm making my sewing patterns. And then I'm going in here to measure my waistline, which is like the most narrow part of my body at this point. And then I'm measuring the vertical distance from my waist to my hip, and I'm going to take note of that, as well as around my hip line. In addition to those measurements, I'm going to be measuring my full dress length from my neckline point out to the hem. I wanted mine to be around my ankles so I could wear it with both flats and with heels. I'm going to draft the front dress pattern and that would guide me for the back, and I'm going in here to draw a short horizontal line on the top edge of my pattern paper, and I'm marking 3 inches below that line. That second line that I'm drawing in now is going to become my bust line, and the first line is going to become my neckline. So I know 3 inches is the distance from the bust to the neckline. After this, I'm going along that top line that I drew first, which is like the neckline, and I'm marking half of my across chest measurement. Mine is 6 inches, which I think was just a little bit too wide. I would have worked with like 5 inches. I think that would have made for a more flattering fit. And then moving on to the bust line, I marked 1/4 of my bust measurement minus 1 inch negative ease, and those I'm connecting together to give me my front arm curve. With stretchy fabrics, you want to have negative ease, which is essentially subtracting 1 to 1.5 inches to allow your fabric stretch across your body. And then I'm going in here to mark the vertical distance from my bust to my waist, and then from my waist to my hip. And these points I'm going to square across, and what I mean by that is to draw a horizontal line that cuts through that point. Along those horizontal lines, I'm going to be marking my body measurements. So if you're making this pattern for yourself, work with your measurements, or if you're making it for a client, work with the client's measurements. Along the waistline, I'm marking 1/4 of my waist measurement minus 1 inch negative ease, and I'm going to be connecting to the bust line to give me the top side of my side seam. The third line, like the third horizontal line, is the waistline, and that I'm drawing in the side seam like so. Before I go ahead to mark 1/4 of my hip measurement minus 1 inch negative ease. If your fabric is super stretchy, you can minus up to 1.5 to 2 inches, but I'm working with 1 inch at this point. That hip point I am connecting to the waistline, so I have a side seam that goes from the bust to the waist and then to the hip. The next thing I'm doing here is marking my full dress length. Mine is 46 inches, so it cuts at my ankles. You can do yours full length like the viral Skims one, which goes all the way down to the floor, and the hem width is the same dimension as my hip. So it kind of just goes as a straight silhouette from the hip all the way down to the hem. So I'm drawing that in with a long meter ruler because it's like a really long maxi dress style. So I have the entire side seam of the dress in place. With the main front dress pattern done, I'm going to go ahead and add seam allowance around this pattern. The front I plan to cut on a fold, so it will just be one piece across the front, so there will not be a seam allowance on the center front edge, but there'll be a seam allowance on the neck, the arm, the side seam, as well as the hemline. I'm just going in here to add my annotations, my grain line, so I have something to guide me when I use this pattern to cut my fabric. Once I have all of those annotations labeled clearly, I'm cutting away any excess paper that I don't need. Honestly, I ran out of pattern paper, and this paper I'm using here is the paper I normally use to wrap my orders, so don't judge me. That is why it is this color. Typically I would use like a white semi-transparent paper, which is a lot sturdier, but this is what I had, and that's what I've used at this point. Now I'm going to lay the front pattern down flat and hold it down with some tape, and I'm going to be tracing off certain lines of the front onto fresh pattern paper, makeshift pattern paper at this point for the back. So I'm tracing off the neckline from the front onto this pattern paper. I'm tracing off the side seam as well. I'm also tracing off the hemline, but the back is going to have some little changes to ensure that it sits really nice on the back of the body. The first thing is the arm curve is a little bit shallower on the back compared to the front, that just swoops a little bit deeper. So this I'm drawing in with the help of my pattern master. You can't really see my front pattern here, but I could see it, which is why I prefer my transparent paper, that you guys will be able to see a lot clearer in the videos. The second change I'm making on my back is I'm adding in a center back waist dart of about 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to be removing about 1/4 inch from the bust and the neckline along the center back edges. I say this is optional, you can just cut your back on a fold as well. You will just have a little bit of, there's a fold that happens when you sew with stretch fabrics that will sit on the back of your dress. If that doesn't really bother you, you can just cut your back on a fold as well, so you just have one piece for the front and one piece for the back. Those points I'm connecting together, so I have a curved edge on the top side of my center back compared to just having it as a straight line. Now that I've made these changes to my center back, I'm going to be adding a seam allowance on the center back edge because of how I have shaped it now, and I'm just drawing this in with a blue pen so you guys can clearly tell that that line is a seam allowance line, and I know I'm going to be cutting 2 pieces for my back dress. With my paper scissors, I'm cutting away any excess paper I don't need on my back dress pattern, and these are the 2 main patterns I made for this dress style or design. Please make it with your measurements or that of your clients to get a much better fit on your body. At the moment, I am between a size 10 and 12, so you have a little bit of reference for yourself. The next set of patterns I'm going to be working on is for the strap, this really skinny spaghetti straps, and I want it to be a continuous piece that goes around the back and front arm curve and into the shoulders. So I'm measuring my front and back arm curve. I'm going to add them together, and then I'm going to measure my body, that sort of like front and back dimension, because I want this strap to be one continuous piece that goes around the arm, under the arm, and across the shoulder. So please use your measurements and just add a little bit extra when you cut this particular strap piece. I think mine ended up being 25 inches long and 1.5 inches wide, so it's a little bit wider than the Skims one. You can make yours really skinny if you want that like really noodly style. For the front finishing, I'm going to be making a bias strip. So I'm measuring my front and my back neckline, and I made a piece that is the same neckline width for the front and the back respectively, so that way I have a way and a means to finish the necklines for my piece on the front and on the back. Because I removed that center back measurements of 1/4 inch, the back bias or the back piece ended up just being a little bit smaller. So with all the patterns I just made, I'm going ahead to cut out my fabric, my nice stretchy fabric. I actually washed my fabric, I let it dry so I don't have any surprises when I wash the dress in the future. But if you've watched the tutorial this far, please give this video a thumbs up so YouTube knows that you guys enjoy tutorials, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. So these are all of the pieces I have. I have my front main piece, which is just 1 piece, and then I have the back pieces, which is 2, and then I have the shoulder straps. I have a pair and 1 each of the neckline finishing for the front and the back. Moving on to the second stage of this project, I'm going to be joining the back pieces first, since I cut mine as two separate pieces, but you can cut your back as one piece on a fold if you want things to be a lot simpler. And I'm overlocking this fabric together. Overlocking stretchy fabrics will ensure that the seams don't break. You can also use a zigzag stitch if you don't have an overlocker. And then once I had my back pieces connected, I'm going to go ahead and join them along the sides with right sides facing each other. With knit fabrics, it can be really tough to tell which side is right or wrong. So on my way back from the shop, I just took a memory note of what side was the right side, and I marked that with a chalk. After I had washed and dried my fabric, so I just knew I was cutting this fabric and using it on the right side. After joining up the side seams, I'm going ahead to overlock the dress hemline, so I know I'm done with my overlocker and I can move on to stitching this piece on my machine. The dress is coming together really nice. At this point, you can actually try on your dress to see if you like the fit, if you want to make it even more snug or loosen things up. This is your chance to do so before you go ahead to finish up the necklines. Now I'm starting off with the front neckline, and I've grabbed the little bias piece that I cut, and I'm sewing the right side of my bias tape to the wrong side, or the inner side of the neckline of the dress, and I'm sewing it in two stages. So I'm sewing it first like on this side, and then I'm going to roll the remaining side of that strip or that bias that I cut onto the right side of my dress. So this particular side I'm stitching now is the side that's going to be visible on the right side of my dress. You can do this the reverse way, and you can cut your bias strip even slimmer than I've done mine. Mine ended up being about 1/2 inch finished dimension, but if you want yours to be really skinny, you can change up your own measurements. I repeated it for the back neckline before going ahead to sew in the shoulder straps. This I'm stitching first like I did for the bias pieces on the inner side. So I'm putting this side like so, and I'm starting from the top back edge along that arm curve. So this I'm going to sew in this direction like so, and once I have that stitched up until the point, the folded edge here is the top back edge on the back of the dress, I'm going to go back in and fold that strap piece against itself. So that is how I finish the bottom of the arm, and I just essentially continue sewing so it ends up creating a slim strap that goes around the shoulder of this dress. You can do this as two separate pieces if you don't want to do it as one piece, because I found for the strap itself, when I got there, it got really skinny, which I honestly didn't mind, but because of how I folded it around the arm curve, I had to fold it just a little bit more when I was stitching the sides that now will become the strap. So fit this on your body so you know how much you need to stitch away on your back neckline, because that is how I'm attaching it at this point. But I actually have a separate tutorial showing how to make your shoulder strap adjustable. If you want to make yours that way, please feel free to do so. That way you can add an adjuster and you can adjust the fit on your body rather than do it the way I have done here. But the final step is to essentially go in, fold and stitch the hemline of your dress. I'm doing this as a normal straight stitch, but I recommend you use a zigzag for an even better finish. So this is the dress all done. Can I just say, stretchy dresses are so comfortable. At this stage of my life, I can breathe, I can eat, I can sit in this. It ended up being a little bit loose, so I know I can go in and make this even tighter around the bust if I wanted. Like I said earlier on, the front neckline is a little bit loose, so when you're measuring your across chest measurement, just measure it a little bit small that you think you actually need, because your fabric will stretch across your chest. But I hope you guys enjoyed watching this tutorial. I had fun creating this. I can imagine myself making this dress in every color under the rainbow because it is that comfortable. But if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you recreate this, don't forget to tag me on social media as usual. And until my next video, have a good morning, afternoon and evening wherever you are. Bye.